Welcome to Mamahood After Trauma, where we stop pretending and heal out loud. I'm Emily Claycorn, trauma survivor, cycle breaker, and mama rebuilding from the inside out. If you're ready to break cycles, trust yourself again, and rise without shame, you're in the right place. Let's go. Before we dive in, I want to introduce you to something brand new. If you love the podcast and want a deeper connection to your healing, check out the monthly Peace Pack, a small trauma-informed tool delivered each month straight to your mailbox to help you find calm in the everyday. You'll also get access to our private Patreon community where mamas like you can share, support, and learn together. Sign up with the link in the show notes. Hello, Mama, and welcome to this episode of the Mamahood After Trauma podcast. I'm thrilled and proud that you have taken some time out of your busy mama schedule to show up for you and tune in and listen to our conversation today. Today, we are thrilled to be joined by Kayla. Welcome.
Thanks, Emily. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to have you. I'm looking forward to our conversation today. So, Kayla, can you just share a little bit of who you are and how you came to work in this space?
Yeah. So I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I specialize in couples and relationships and trauma. Um, I became a therapist because I've had a lot of my own experiences with therapy, and some of them truly probably saved my life. And it was really inspiring. I also had some not great experiences. And so I feel like just as a client of therapy, I learned a lot. And I was really encouraged after, some really challenging times in my life and having just incredible therapists. So I was really inspired to go and go back to school to become a therapist. And then just throughout my own, again, continuing therapy, I learned processing my own trauma. I learned that I would really like to help other people do
Mm-hmm.
that, because it's so, sometimes people don't realize that you can heal from trauma
Mm-hmm.
and that this is just how it's got to be. And so I was really encouraged when I healed some of my own trauma. And so then I went and got trained in EMDR and some other kind of trauma modalities.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. So I think today I want to highlight for our listeners how trauma can impact our relationships because I think like there's the obvious um, of avoidant attachment styles and um, trauma bonding, but I think there are a lot of ways that trauma impacts our relationships that we're not super aware of. And so, if you could talk a little bit about some of the ways that trauma does impact our relationships, the less obvious ways.
Mhm. Yeah, it definitely impacts every part of our relationships. Our traumas have created beliefs inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so we carry those beliefs through everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we look at scenarios, situations from a lens of those beliefs. So, if somebody developed a belief of, um, I'm not lovable, right? In their relationship, when there's conflict, when there's any kind of like discord, that's going to be where they go first. Okay, well, this means I'm not lovable.
Mm-hmm.
Conflict, when their partner's upset, that's going to just be that will be interpreted as just evidence that this negative belief is correct. And that can show up with any negative belief. And so, two people could have the exact same experience, but if one person has a belief of I'm not lovable, and another person has a belief of there's something wrong with me, even with the same experience, those are the things that each person will like, it'll kind of boil down to for them. So that's really important to keep in mind, but also, so often we are having a response to something that's not right in front of us. And
Mm-hmm.
so even though our partner, we're, interacting with them, sometimes we'll be responding to them as if we're actually talking to like an angry parent or someone unsafe from our past or something like that. And so sometimes, a partner can say, why, I don't understand why they keep getting like, why they're acting scared of me. I've never done anything scary. Well, that's because they experienced that in the past. They're getting triggered in that moment and they're responding as if they would have in the past.
Yeah. And I think those are some really important points that you made. So, something that I have learned is that when you're able to identify those beliefs that you have, that you developed in your trauma, then you are able, those beliefs are responsible for creating assumptions about the world and yourself and other people. And they're also responsible for creating rules for you to live by, whether or not the rules are helpful or not. And so when you're walking through life with these beliefs that you may or may not be aware of, you are living by the assumptions and the rules of that belief. Whether or not that is helpful for you to move forward in your life, or if it's going to cause you to self destruct out of self preservation, uh, that's how it works, friends.
Yeah.
And so I think the biggest task that you can do to help yourself, and Kayla, maybe you can talk a little bit more on this, is doing the work to identify those beliefs.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, is that yes, definitely being able to like understand that because otherwise, back to that example of feeling not lovable,
Mm-hmm.
you, you don't recognize that this is a belief you hold, then you're going to be thinking your partner is seeing you as not lovable. So that
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness can really, help you recognize, wait a second, this is something that I am kind of,
Mm-hmm.
I tend to go to. And so, it's not necessarily my partner's belief.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to like identify that, but also, that we develop adaptations, especially with childhood trauma, to deal with those,
Mm-hmm.
to deal with our experiences, our traumatic experiences as children. And we develop those around the age of like 4 or 5. And so they're very immature,
Mm-hmm.
and like a 4 or 5-year-old. And so, that can be escaping or, you know, um, like screaming and shouting, trying to get attention. It can be people pleasing. But what
Mm-hmm.
happens as an adult, is those adaptations didn't go away. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's why when people do get triggered as an adult, they, w- our adaptations kept us alive,
Yeah.
and so that's an automatic go-to is usually whatever that adaptation was formed at 4 or 5 years old, that'll still show up today. And
Mm-hmm.
so, It might look a little different. For example, somebody who used to like go run and hide, they might use substances now, another form
Mm-hmm.
of escaping, but sometimes they do look exactly the same, the kind of throwing a tantrum, that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of those adaptations are very immature behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Again, they were formed as children and they were very adaptive then. Today they're maladaptive, because now we
Yeah.
have resources that we didn't have when we were children, and we do have the ability to protect ourselves and, handle things in a more mature way. But you've
Mm-hmm.
got to be able to recognize that this is an adaptation. This is something I developed in childhood, and I'm really grateful that I had that because that helped me survive, protect myself. And today I can do things differently. I can do it
Mm-hmm.
a more mature way. Um, because, especially when if your partner kind of triggers you and then your
Mm-hmm.
response might trigger them, it really looks like two 5-year-olds fighting,
Yeah.
and so being able to like acknowledge that and recognize like, okay, wait a second, I've got different resources now. I can handle
Yeah.
things differently. I mean, that can be transformative in your life in general, and then definitely in relationships.
Absolutely. So one of our missions here on the Mamahood After Trauma podcast is to make healing accessible to all mamas, regardless of whatever financial or time restraint that they may be experiencing in their life. And so, with that in mind, what are one or two action steps that a mama can take with her today once the episode wraps up and she can implement in her life to help her navigate her beliefs and learn how to identify them and heal.
Yeah. Yeah. So, one of the, when I ask people, if they come in and they're talking about a conflict or something, their partner, they'll say, well, they didn't even say hello to me when they walked in the door, something like that. And I'll say, a question I often ask is, what does that mean about you that that happened? And oftentimes that'll give you the belief, right? Well, it
Mm-hmm.
means that I'm lovable, or it means that there's something wrong with me. So asking yourself that a lot when you feel like there's something, you're having some kind of response, asking yourself, what does this mean about me that my partner did that?
Mm-hmm.
That'll often give you that belief. But I think, mindfulness is so important because it gives you, I mean, I love meditation, but any form of mindfulness can be helpful because it allows you the ability to pause before you react.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be invaluable because we just, it's almost like an automatic response is that
Yeah.
adaptation. And so if you have the ability to even for a split second think before you react and think, wait, I don't want to do this. Um, like I said, it can be like invaluable. Also, I do a lot of like inner child work
Mm-hmm.
in sessions, but you can even do that at home, and that's just, really talking to your inner child. It's pretty interesting because when I do inner child work, sometimes I'll ask people like, what is your inner child feeling right now? And sometimes they'll say, I don't know, but I'll
Mm-hmm.
guide them to actually ask that child and they'll get an answer. And so we really do have inner children living inside of us. And so um, it's important. I guide people through, pulling up your inner child and just showing appreciation for
Mm-hmm.
how they protected you all of these years and also reassuring them that they don't need to anymore. You've got
Mm-hmm.
resources that they didn't have. You can protect them now.
Mm-hmm.
And then just continuing to check in with your inner child, writing letters, just like keeping in mind, keep reassuring them that they don't need to continue protecting you anymore. that can really be important and helpful in order to kind of like disconnect that maladaptive adaptation.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I have done with my inner child work when I first started my healing journey in doing a lot of my inner child work was giving my inner child gratitude
Yeah.
for
Right.
protecting me
Mm-hmm.
and then guiding her to, give me the reins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And now it's time for me to protect her. And
Right.
that has been a process, but it's been hugely transformative. So, how can our listeners connect with you further if they'd like to do so?
Yeah, my website is just southdenvertherapy.com, and I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, South Denver Therapy.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today, Kayla. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Emily. I really love being here.
Thanks for listening to Mamahood After Trauma. Take one insight from today, breathe, reflect, and keep healing out loud. Subscribe to the podcast for more stories, tools, and support. And remember, Mama, you're breaking cycles and rising with honesty. Until next time, mend the past so you can mama in peace.